At least in public, a red wave, Republicans adding to their congressional majorities. Most every poll and analysts predict that Democrats will retake the House, if not the Senate. And speaking of the Senate, tomorrow begins days of hearings for the president's latest nominee to the highest court in the land. These were sure to be hyper-partisan and pressure-packed even before the White House decided to hold back some 100,000 documents pertaining to Brett Kavanaugh's work in the George W. Bush administration. Documents Senate Democrats very much would like to see. CNN's Abby Phillip is at the White House for us this morning. And Abby, let's start with the campaigner-in-chief. What is the president planning this week?
Well, good morning, Ryan. President Trump is heading out on the campaign trail this week, making 3 stops in 2 cases targeting some vulnerable Democrats who are running in some closely watched Senate races. He's going to be in Montana on Thursday, then North Dakota on Friday, followed by a campaign fundraiser on Friday in South Dakota. But this is the president really making good on a promise to head out and help Republicans keep the Senate, help push out some vulnerable Democrats. In one case, a feud with John Tester in Montana that he has been eager to fulfill. He's been trying to get Tester out of that seat after Tester played a role in nixing one of his Veterans Affairs Department nominees. So the president, it's personal in that race, but the president is really saying he's going to be out there most of the week from now up until the campaign, the November elections, in part because it's a understanding of how serious this issue is for Republicans. They really understand that the Senate could be at risk of flipping here, and they're trying to, in some cases, flip some Democratic seats that are being held, Montana and North Dakota in particular.
And Abby, while the president's on the road, the fight begins over his next Supreme Court nominee. What can you tell us about the fight over the documents from Brett Kavanaugh during his time during the Bush administration?
That's right, Ryan. Well, we knew that there were going to be some big fights on the document front with Kavanaugh. Kavanaugh has a long history working in White Houses and also on the bench. Now, the Trump administration is actually claiming constitutional privilege to hold on to about 100,000 documents that pertain to his activities while he worked in the White House. And so that is something that Democrats were expecting, but they are crying foul here. Republicans are saying, the White House is saying, they've already made available about 440,000 documents. So they're saying there are plenty that's out there from Brett Kavanaugh's time, both on the bench and in the White House. But this is a fight that was expected, and it seems that they're going to hold on to these 100,000 documents despite Democrats wanting them to release them for the sake of transparency, Ryan.
All right, Trump administration holding firm on this. Abby Phillip live at the White House. Abby, thank you. More on the Kavanaugh nomination this week. At least one Democrat promising sparks will fly at the judge's hearing. Suzanne Malveaux joining me now. Suzanne, what else are lawmakers saying about this situation?
Well, Ryan, you can bet that sparks are going to be flying, and he also says there's going to be a lot of heat when it comes to this very issue. He also is going to be saying that that there is going to be controversy as well. Now, there was just last week I spoke with both Senator Dianne Feinstein, she's the top Democrat on the Senate Judiciary Committee, as well as Senator Dick Durbin last week. And what they said is that they really wanted to know quite a bit from Kavanaugh in the hearings, but also the private meetings, that they were both frustrated with what they see as a real lack of transparency from the nominee, as well as these lack of documents that are coming their way. Kavanaugh, he has an extensive legal record as the federal judge for the U.S. Court of Appeals in D.C. Circuit, but having issued more than 300 opinions and dissents, he's really an open book in that area. But it's his time as working with the President George W. Bush, as Deputy White House Counsel and Staff Secretary, that Democratic critics believe is going to reveal the true thinking regarding some of those controversial issues, like his position on the administration's then torture policy, the administration's now refusal to provide those 100,000 pages of documentation has led Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer over the weekend to declare we're witnessing a Friday night document massacre, and Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar over the weekend also to decry that this is not the way that the Supreme Court should behave in terms of vetting a nominee.
this isn't normal. It's not normal because we are not able to see 100,000 documents that the archivist has just, because the administration has said we can't see them. They've exerted their executive power. 148,000 documents that I've seen that you cannot see because they won't allow us to make them public. So I can't even tell you about them right now on the show.
So, Suzanne, there's obviously a lot of big issues that we're going to be talking about this week with Brett Kavanaugh. Executive power, abortion, gun control. I mean, those are just three of the big key issues. Where does he stand from what we can tell?
So it's going to be a very difficult process, that we know. And we know that the Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee, they're arguing that the heart of the debate over these documents and the Democrats is their desire to stall this process, to drag this out through the midterms. We do expect the kind of boilerplate questions to Kavanaugh regarding his stand on abortion rights, gun control, also an interest in marriage equality. It is going to be the issue of presidential power that's going to be most notable, considering all of the investigations, the potential legal jeopardy that the president faces with the Russia investigation.
All right, busy week on Capitol Hill for sure. All right, Suzanne, thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right, let's talk more about this. I want to bring in CNN legal and national security analyst Asha Rangappa and former Yale University law and political science professor Akhil Amar. Akhil, let's begin with you. We have a lot going on here in this conversation regarding the confirmation process of Brett Kavanaugh. I mean, what are the things that you're looking for this week?
Well, I'm actually going to be testifying on Friday, but I don't think I've been fired yet, so I'm not former. I'm still there. And I think your setup piece nicely cataloged a lot of the process and substantive issues that will arise. My own view is the most important part of the record to examine is his record as a judge. It's the most recent and it's the most probative of what sort of justice he'd be.
Asha, to that point, I mean, so much has been made about the White House's refusal to hand over all of these documents related to his time in the George W. Bush administration. How important is that? Is it more important than his judicial record, or is it something that these members of the Senate should have access to?
Well, I think that given the unusual circumstances that we're in, we have on the horizon potential looming issues that may come up with regard to the president himself. And I think it's important that the legitimacy of the court, should Kavanaugh be confirmed, not be questioned. And so to that extent, I think that there should be a completely informed advice and consent of the Senate. The Presidential Records Act means that a lot of those documents are no longer going to be able to be privileged starting in 2021. They will come out, and at that point, I don't think there should be any question that there wasn't full information at the time that Kavanaugh was confirmed, just to preserve the legitimacy of the pronouncements of the court, whichever way they go.
Akhil, I wonder, from your perspective, how much we should take into this idea of these documents, even if they were revealed, what they would tell us about Brett Kavanaugh. I mean, he was working as an attorney, and the White House or the president was his client at that time. Does it necessarily tell us anything about his political leanings if those documents were to be revealed?
Well, it doesn't necessarily tell us something about how he would rule as a justice. And to that precise point, one of the points I will be making in my testimony on Friday as one of the witnesses before the Senate Judiciary Committee is in a piece that your audience can pull up off the web in the 2016 Marquette Lawyer alumni magazine. Judge Brett Kavanaugh gave a speech about his vision of separation of powers and singled out as his role model Robert Jackson, who was the president's lawyer, said all sorts of pro-presidential things that got quoted back at him when he sat on the court as Justice Jackson in a famous case involving presidential power, the Steele seizure case. And Jackson actually said, that was when I was a presidential mouthpiece. Now I'm a justice, very different job. And Brett Kavanaugh actually singled out Justice Jackson in that opinion as his, Kavanaugh's, role model for judicial independence.
And Asha, I wonder, too, are we making too much about Brett Kavanaugh's views on executive power given the current political climate? Shouldn't we have a more wholesome view of his judicial record and how he thinks on a number of issues? I mean, obviously, the climate right now regarding President Trump is important, but this is a man that's going to sit on the court for a lifetime. Is there too much focus on his thoughts on executive power?
I think you're absolutely right, Ryan. You know, this is someone who will sit on the court with a lifetime tenure, so absolutely all of his judicial philosophies should be examined. And in fact, I think when you look at his writings on executive power specifically, if you look carefully, they're not really that favorable to the president. He has, you know, emphasized that, you know, the executive privilege, for example, to shield from criminal investigation is legitimate. Shouldn't be used to shield criminal liability. The special counsel, as it's currently constituted, actually conforms to a lot of the critiques that he said should be corrected after the independent counsel statute expired. So I don't know that that is the only issue, and even on that issue, it's not necessarily a slam dunk for the president.
Well, he's certainly going to be grilled on a number of these topics, including executive power and beyond this week on Capitol Hill. A busy week for Brett Kavanaugh in the nomination process. Thank you for your perspectives, Akhil Amar and Asha Rangappa. We appreciate you being here. And still to come, does special counsel Robert Mueller have a midterm problem? The closer we get to November, are we less likely to see any of the results of the Russia investigation? Plus, cameras are rolling when a woman carrying a baby reportedly tries to escape a high-speed chase by carjacking another driver. And one of the richest men on the planet with some advice for President Trump.
What is